There is another installment in the Law and Order franchise. Hi there, thanks for joining us for Plain English lesson number 379 for Thursday, July 12th, 2021. I'm Jeff. JR is the producer, and this full lesson can be found at plainenglish.com/379. That's where you'll find the transcript, how-to video, translations, exercises, flashcards, quizzes, and more. Coming up today, I couldn't believe it. I must have been living under a rock, but a new series in the famous U.S. television franchise Law and Order aired this spring, and it features one of my favorite characters from long ago. Elliot Stabler is back, and the new series is called Law and Order: Organized Crime. That's the topic of today's lesson. The English expression is a phrasal verb, land on, and we have a song of the week. Let's get going. If you flip around the cable channels in the US, you're bound to hear a two-note sound effect that sounds like a stylized version of a jail cell door slamming shut. If you hear that sound, you've landed on an episode of Law and Order, or one of the show's many spin-offs. The original Law and Order premiered in 1990 and concluded its 20th and final season in 2010. But the concept gave rise to 6 spin-offs that have aired on U.S. television. Plus, they've made versions in the UK, France, and Russia. In fact, one of the spin-offs became even more popular than the original. Law and Order Special Victims Unit is the longest-running live-action drama in American television history, and the show is currently in its 22nd season. SVU, as it's called for short, tracks a New York City Police Department unit assigned specially to investigate sexually based offenses. The franchise's creator is Dick Wolf. After having created Law and Order, he went on to create a series of crime, medical, and legal dramas based in Chicago. You'll know them as Chicago Med, Chicago Fire, Chicago PD, and Chicago Justice. He's also been involved in several other American TV shows, but he recently returned to his most famous franchise and launched a new spin-off called Law and Order: Organized Crime. Up until this latest spin-off, all the Law and Order episodes have been procedurals, more than 1,000 of them in total over the multiple versions of the title-named show. A procedural is a type of program in which a problem is presented at the beginning, the main characters try to resolve the problem during most of the show, and a resolution is presented at the end. Most procedurals are police procedurals, where the show opens with a crime, investigators try to solve the crime, and the show ends in an arrest or a trial. You'll recognize this format if you've watched NCIS or any of the CSI shows, or even old episodes of Dragnet, Matlock, or Murder, She Wrote. The television show called House is an example of a medical procedural. The nice thing about a procedural is that you can flip around the channels, land on an episode from any season, and enjoy it without having any prior knowledge of the show. You don't need to know what happened before, and you're not left wanting to know what happens next. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. This contrasts with a story arc show where a single story is developed through a season or multiple seasons. And that's what the new Law and Order show is, a story arc. Detective Elliot Stabler was one of the original protagonists in Law and Order SVU, but he left the show about 10 years ago. His character retired from the police department. At the beginning of Organized Crime, we learn that he has since been living in Italy and working for the New York City Police Department, investigating international crimes with a New York connection. When he comes back to the U.S., his wife is the victim of a car bombing, and it's related to his work in Italy. He soon becomes involved with an investigation in the U.S. to uncover a smuggling operation of COVID-19 vaccines and personal protective equipment. The mafia bosses he was tracking overseas are suspected, and the story develops from there. Detective Stabler is played by the actor Christopher Maloney, and he was one of the most popular characters when he was on SVU. He's a tough guy who tries to protect his family and friends from the horrors that he sees at work. But he also has a temper, and he's always been willing to bend or break the rules if he thinks it serves the investigation or justice. At first, I was surprised they reintroduced his character in the new series. Judging by the political climate, the public doesn't have much appetite for cops who bend the rules. But this part of the story develops over the first few episodes when Stabler must adapt to the times of stricter rules on police behavior, cameras everywhere, and zero tolerance for mistakes. Organized Crime has an updated, high-energy version of the classic Law and Order theme music, and just like in the other series, a narrator reads the same script at the beginning of each episode, establishing the premise of the show. I watched the first episode of Organized Crime and found it to be very disorienting. I was confused. It turns out that a lot of important information was revealed in a previous episode of SVU during a crossover promotional episode. After I watched that episode, I felt more prepared for Organized Crime. And by the end of the second episode, I was hooked. I like the more modern take on the classic show, and I'll keep watching. Law and Order: Organized Crime is available on Peacock TV, Hulu, and Amazon Prime. There are 8 episodes in the first season, but the show has been renewed for a longer second season. SVU is still one of my favorites. Back before the days of video streaming, I'd sometimes turn on the TV just in the hopes of relaxing and watching something that didn't require a lot of work to follow the story. I'd flip around and hope that a Law and Order was on USA or TNT or one of those cable channels. Those were great in hotel rooms after a long day of work. Easy to follow, one and done procedurals. Today's expression is to land on something. I must admit, this is not a very common expression. However, you do hear it from time to time. And one of those times was earlier in today's lesson. I asked you to imagine you were flipping through the channels and you landed on an episode of Law and Order identifiable by the signature sound effects they use throughout the show. If you're flipping through the channels and you land on Law and Order, you decide to stop when you reach Law and Order. When we say you land on something, we're talking about considering many available options and finally deciding on one. If you're flipping through the channels, you might land on a game show, a sporting event, a reality show, a cooking show, whatever. The point is, you've got many options. You're sampling them all, and you finally decide on one. I'm revisiting the copy on the home page of Plain English. The copy is the text on the home page. We're going to be revealing a new design for the home page very soon, and I decided I wanted to revisit the wording. And let me tell you, this is not easy finding the right words to put on a web page. I wanted to find a word that communicates what we really offer here. We're not teaching you English exactly, so I didn't want to say you should learn English with us. I thought about study, but that sounds too much like a classroom. Improve is a good word, and that's really close to what we offer, but in my opinion, the word improve is just a little too boring. It's just really common. So you can see I'm thinking it through. I'm trying a bunch of different words. I'm sampling some, and I have to decide on one. So what word did I land on? I landed on the word upgrade. That really is what we try to help you do here. We help you upgrade your English. So when you see the new homepage, you'll see the word upgrade prominently displayed because that's our real value proposition. Of course, you all are either free or plus members, so you'll have your own homepage after you log in. A few years back, I had been living in New York and I decided to move away. I was fortunate to have a job that would let me live in any big city in the US. And if I wanted to twist some arms, in a lot of big cities around the world. I considered a lot of places to live. I thought seriously about Houston. I thought about Atlanta. I thought about Dallas, Miami, Los Angeles, and San Diego. In the end, I landed on Chicago. I had lived here before, and I honestly just wanted to come back. So I landed on Chicago. I thought about it. I considered many different options. And when I finally decided, I decided on Chicago. I landed on Chicago. You might be looking to hire a new team member at work. You might be reading resumes, and you might have a lot of options. Ronnie might have more business experience overall, but Simone might have the more specific experience for the job. Raphael was recommended by someone you trust. Who will you hire? You'll read all their applications, interview them, and then it's decision time. Who will you land on? Who will you decide on? There's nothing like a solid recommendation, so maybe you'll land on Raphael. Who knows? Today's song of the week is Bell Bottom Blues by Derek and the Dominoes. It's inspired by Monday's episode about skinny jeans. Bell bottoms, you might remember, were a style from the 60s and 70s. In the song, Eric Clapton, the lead singer, says, "I don't want to fade away," and asks to have one more chance with his ex-lover. Bell Bottom Blues is one of my favorite songs from Eric Clapton, officially the band Derek and the Dominoes, and that is JR's Song of the Week for today. And that is all for today's lesson. I hope you enjoyed it. The frustrating thing is, when I want to talk about TV shows, I don't know who has access to what. I think Law & Order Organized Crime is available on Amazon Prime, but it's impossible to know the streaming rights in every country. If you can't find this one, I would recommend watching any Law & Order episode. There are a bunch on Netflix, at least here, and some on Amazon too. You should watch at least one episode because it's super popular here in the US. And you did hear me correctly that a new version of the website is coming soon. The structure will be the same. And unlike the last time I did this, about a year ago, you won't have to learn a new system. You won't have to get used to new ways of doing things. That will all remain the same. But the look and feel and the user experience will be upgraded. There's that word again. I love it these days. I can't tell you exactly when the new site will be ready because I don't know, but definitely check back. Well, the next lesson will be on Monday. We'll see you then. Good luck with your English. Remember, every Monday and Thursday, join us for new lessons at plainenglish.com.